My name is Commissioner Frank Avila, and this is Avila Making a Difference. My guest is Sister Dawn Nothwehr. The title of our show is Ending Poverty and Anthropogenically Induced Climate Change. Sister Dawn Nothwehr is a Franciscan sister and holds a Ph.D. Sister Dawn is an associate professor of ethics and chair of the Department of Historical and Doctrinal Studies with the Catholic Theological Union. Sister Dawn's research interest has been in global climate change, environmental ethics, and ecotheology in our globalized, terrorized, ecological threatened world. Sister Dawn has written several books, including her latest book, The Franciscan Theology of the Environment. Thanks for being on our show, Dawn.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. You know, the title of our show, Poverty and Man-Made Climate Change. And we use that word anthropogenically.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister, isn't it?
but really, it's man-made.
That's
man-made
right.
climate
That's what we're
change.
Talking about. Yeah.
Because our world is changing.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I was growing up, I grew up here in Chicago.
Sure.
My neighbors were my next door.
Yeah.
That's who were my neighbors that were on the block, and we knew each other.
Sure.
Growing up. But now, in 2008, our neighbor is the whole world.
That's right, very easily, and that I think is just indicative of a lot of things that have changed, and one of those things that has changed is, you know, in that same neighborhood, if you created some what we'd call garbage, it was a small amount in that small neighborhood, but now we've got a world population that's just burgeoned, and we have all of this, trash in one world, and there is no away, and so I think that's one of the more homey ways of talking about this. We talk about anthropogenically, generated climate change. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, and all of that has an impact on how we live and what happens to our neighbors ultimately. So,
yes. Yeah. So what led you to be interested in this topic, poverty and global climate change? Did you want to save the world, or is it, or because the Pope came out? Remember the new 7 deadly sins?
Yeah,
and one of them was the environment.
That's right. Yeah.
But I thought that was been around since history.
Well, yeah, it is, and I think I think we're all products of our growing up and what we were taught when we were youngsters. And one of the good things that happened to me when I grew up in Minnesota, and I grew up in what we call the heartland of this United States, in southern Minnesota. My growing up was in a small town, but all of my friends lived on farms, and my father was a product of South Dakota and the Depression there. My mother grew up in northern Minnesota in the wonderful pine forests in northern Minnesota, and so I think kind of by osmosis in many ways I learned to appreciate the environment for what it is, for what it can do for us, not only in a productive sort of way as a nurturing us through the lands and the forests and the resources, but also more in the spiritual way, in the sense that it's the beauty of nature that often inspires us to do some of our best things, and that an appreciation from that really was part of daily life. We had a big garden, we had a large lot around our family home with lots of plants and flowers and hedges and things like that. And so as a kid, I was always out there, helping mom or dad doing one or the other things, with either the garden or the lawn or something. And we often would take family vacations, usually camping in northern Minnesota or the boundary waters of northern Minnesota and so on. So I think as I grew up, I was of this baby boomer generation, and we had the first Earth Day in 1970s, when I was a college student, and I think I again was awakened in yet another way about that. And then I went to the College of St. Teresa, which was a Franciscan college, and Franciscan sisters there also were very adamant about teaching in our science classes and throughout the context of the college. about the environment, and the fact that you know, already back then science was saying that we're doing real damage to ourselves in terms of all the different kinds of pollutions, and it's something that there really is a limit to what the Earth can regenerate, and so those kinds of things really began to make a lot of sense to me. And also then from the poverty standpoint, my major in my first degree is in social work and psychology.
And your sister, right? The
That's
sister
right,
don't
yeah.
make much money, so you've always been in that level.
Well, yeah, and voluntarily, but also I think for us, poverty means there's another whole dimension to that, and I think it does speak to the wider economy in the sense that I think you know, one of the things that you know, we in a society that we're seeing now, we have so much material possessions in our world, and
we waste a lot of it.
right, and that's, you know, we see with like our technology. There's a lot of good things that technology does, but one of the things that happens with our technology is that it becomes antiquated so quickly, and then what do we do with the old one? You know, or you know, and I mean, and that's just one small area of our life. And in the United States, we've lived in abundance. We've had a lot of things to throw away. So what do we do? And so, you know, what is it in us within the human spirit that really requires to have so much? It's not that material things are bad, but when material things accumulate to the point where they're also taking away from the kinds of time and energy and creativity and imagination that we could otherwise give over to solving some of the world's human problems, for example, or you know, creating technologies that really don't make a large carbon footprint and so on, then I think, you know, we're doing damage. And so in that sense, this poverty of spirit that the Christian Gospels talk about is very much important, and it will become increasingly important, I think, as we look at resolving the problems of both poverty and climate change, and meaning material poverty in this instance.
So we talk about it, but how are you working on this topic? I mean, what can you do as a sister?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know,
single-handedly, probably not much. Well, you know, I think.
And then you're from the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's where the school is. Yeah, I live in a different area of the city, but you know, again, I think the religious world is the place where you know, it's a center of culture, it's a center of value, it's a center of meaning, and I don't think any society, even those that proclaim themselves to be secular societies, there's still a kind of a fundamental belief system that drives the culture, drives, you know, the economy. Valuing is not separate from economic decision making. And you know, back in 1990 already, there was a group of about 34 scientists, Carl Sagan and some others, who met in Geneva, and they actually invited the religious community to participate in trying to deal with the environmental questions and the environmental causes. Or the causes that they were already back then seeing as irreversible climate change. And
you know, that's because, you know, depending on your point of view,
mm-hmm.
On how the world got started and how human being came to being,
mm-hmm.
In the book of Genesis, the first sentence, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So on the religious side,
mm-hmm.
on their practice and their beliefs, yes, God did create the planet,
sure.
And He put everything on it, and He also put man. Mm-hmm. He put a man and a woman on the planet, mm-hmm. to be caretaker of it.
Sure, and every major world religion has a very similar story. Indigenous peoples, even science has a story. When you speak of the story of evolution. Whether you're talking about Big Bang Theory or something, some other dimension that science might be looking at, there is a starting point, and I think that the commonality in all that is whatever happened next was really quite an awesome, glorious thing. And what is it that we, as human persons, can do to preserve that beauty, that glory, that goodness? Or, on the other hand, what is it that we're doing that is destroying, oftentimes irreparably, doing damage to this beautiful thing that we have, creation, including human persons? So, you know, if you look at all the various species that have gone extinct, or the ways in which
creatures, yes,
yeah, and human beings, we've done a lot of extinction and extinguishing of one another as well.
Oh yeah.
So you know, I think it's in many ways we are all part of this same creation. We're oftentimes you hear people using the term the web of life. Or similar kinds of terms, and that's really where I think our culture it has kind of in many ways been weak and done us a disservice, because we have not really emphasized the communal dimension of who we are as human persons. And rightfully so at some points, you know, when we were looking at extremes of you know, Marxist or Stalinist communism and some of those kinds of things, yes, there were definite you know, evils that were part of that. But we also, in fighting that, I think oftentimes gave up the more balanced views that really are the nurturing, nourishing kinds of ways of being community and being for each other, and allowing governments to do certain kinds of regulatory service for us to keep things in balance. Because
so we do need government.
We do need government. I do believe that. Absolutely.
And also this gets back to, as I mentioned, the whole world is our neighbor. Mm-hmm. And so foreign trade. Yes. You know, every country has a trade agreement. Mm-hmm. And maybe in this trade agreement, and this is where our next president, you know, we're having election season right now, and mm-hmm. Republican, Democrat, going to one of those, Democrat or Republican, going to be president. Mm-hmm. They're going to be facing an mm-hmm. environmental crisis, mm-hmm. and how are they going to solve it? Do they solve mm-hmm. it through mm-hmm. trade agreements, mm-hmm. where one product that comes over here makes sure that it's environmentally safe, mm-hmm. and vice versa? Mm-hmm. So our next president is going to be facing a big decision in how to solve our environment. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think trade is definitely part of that, but I think also what maybe is you know, maybe more at the heart center of things is, you know, where are we going to get our energy, and how we're going to get our energy, and in what ways are we going to you talk about the human spirit, you know, and incentives, or, you know, how do we support the technologies that really are truly green technologies that don't increase the carbon footprint that we make every day, and pollute and continue to contribute to what we know are ways in which climate change is being induced by human persons.
You know, you as a sister mm-hmm. of the Franciscan order. Yes. And you're with the Chicago Theological Union. Yes. Right. Yes. So here your emphasis is on global climate change. Yes. Poverty. Right. Yes. So what is the Catholic Theological Union doing themselves mm-hmm. about showing, look, this is what we're doing, and this is what you can do? What are you guys doing?
Well, we're doing a variety of things. First of all, if you drive down to the south side in Hyde Park at 5416 South Cornell Avenue, you'll see a kind of spanking brand new building. Brand new building? And we were fortunate enough to move into that a couple of years ago now. And there are several things. I mean, the heating, the cooling system, the green roof, the ways in which we are
by a green roof. You have a garden up there.
Yeah. There's plants up there. There's garden up there.
And then your downspouts. Are you recycling that water?
That water,
to water
yes,
your lawn.
Yeah, we have a wonderful maintenance man, Marty Fitzgerald, is very ecologically conscious about running all those systems, and
you're not using any pesticides or herbicides on your lawn.
As far as I know, that's the aim, because again, we actually had this was a year ago, Earth Day and Earth Week. We actually in our big atrium we had a big display of all different sorts of dimensions of ecological instruction. We had we were giving away all those lovely little squiggly light bulbs, and we had some lectures, some special programs by the different professors. I was involved in that. Our students sold T-shirts that said "Green CTU," and throughout our system, in terms of the kinds of paper we use, recycled paper. We have recycling bins setting up all over in our building. You'll see the blue cans around.
And who picks that up?
We have a special fast service that picks this up, and our regular maintenance people do the care for that end of it. And then internally, we're as a group of schools on the south side, and then actually nationally, there's what we call the Green Seminary Initiative, and this is a rather new but thoroughgoing kind of organization, in the sense that we look at not only what kinds of buildings we house our schools in, but what do we teach and how do we teach it.
When you talk about your school, are you talking about the Chicago Theological Union, or are you talking about all the Catholic schools in the Archdiocese here in Chicago?
Well, Catholic Theological Union is not an agency of the Archdiocese per se. It's a separately incorporated graduate school of theology and ministry, and it's run by about 25 religious orders who gathered together their resources to do seminary training for their priesthood candidates. That was the origin back in 1968 or thereabouts. And now it's about 40% of our students are laypersons, and about that same cut, about 40% are international students. So when we teach to a classroom that literally comes from the world. When we look at when I teach environmental ethics, for example, I'm not only teaching North American students, but I'm matter of fact, this morning I had a class where I was talking about some of these issues, and probably about a third of the class were North American, from people from the U.S. But I had a Filipino, I had a person from mainland China, I had somebody from Vietnam, and so the question was from the Vietnamese student, well, I live in, my people are in Vietnam, we've had famine, and you want to talk about trying to preserve the environment. People are literally eating the roots of the plants because that's all that's there, and the world, for a variety of reasons, has not brought food aid to that part of the country. So the questions for how do we live out being ecologically stewards of God's creation is very, very different in a setting like that than we have to talk about it in North America. There we have to name,
because they're our neighbors.
Precisely.
They're our neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the very what I would name as outrightly sinful dimension of what's going on with our environment, where we can show that not all, but much of the desertification, the ice melt, a lot of these things are caused by human activity, and insofar as we can do that, we do it at our peril, not only in terms of our survival, but I think in terms of our spiritual wealth and poverty in that regard, because when we have a a sense about ourselves as a world that we blatantly choose, sometimes by not choosing, to allow this to go on. That's to me where religious values, and religious people who say that we believe in a God who cares for all, and that we are to love one another, and some of these other lovely, virtuous kinds of things that we attest to, they have no meaning unless we ultimately, do the practice to make the choices. And so in our work, and both in terms of what we teach, we're educating future ministers and priests in our situation, and our other schools, that are part of the Green Seminary initiative. They too are doing similar kinds of things. And again, going back to what we were talking about earlier in the program, where religion, is the place where many people find meaning, and meaning in turn that influences the culture. So I think that there's where we have a really a great opportunity to make a difference.
And this is where the relationship between poverty and climate change comes into being.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, you had that one student from the Philippines, Vietnam,
right,
where they don't have enough food to eat, and so they're eating the roots of the plants. Yeah. And so how are they going to farm?
That's right. Yeah. And it's there's in the lots of places in Asia and China. You hear about overgrazing. Well, part of the overgrazing comes from, again, pressures economically for people like us to have more. Sure.
Where the livestock, maybe they're raising the livestock, they're destroying the farmland. Yeah. And they're eating everything off that farmland. It's a barren farmland. They can't do much with it.
That's right.
Because we want cashmere sweaters, maybe, or something.
Yeah, and that's one really good example. Yeah. So one can easily find oneself at a place of gloom and doom. But I do think that. I think sometimes it takes that kind of a realization to begin to wake up to say, well, do we really want to live this way?
Or do we really need the things that we see at the store? Do we really need that?
Yeah, and
look deeper into.
And then what, if we don't want to live that way, and if we don't want to continue to do this harm, well, then we have one choice, and that is to to stop and take a look at, well, what do we need to change? And I think again, science and technology, and I think we know enough about what we need to do. Part of the problem is that we haven't just buckled down to do it.
Well, I see problems now facing our society now, is that you have scientists and engineers with their views, and then you have the environmental groups with their views. And maybe the two views are not the same views to solve a problem. And maybe one view wants to spend $10 billion to solve the problem, and maybe the other side said, no, you only need $1 billion. So who steps in to solve this problem?
Well, I don't know. There's
and I see it now.
Yeah,
I see it now.
Yeah, clearly that's a question of political ethics and politics. I think it's all there. And but part of it is, I think, really learning at the particulars of a case and taking a good look at, at what point can we truly say we're serving the common good, and not maybe looking at some kind of special interest or looking at maybe in the name of some kind of a tokenistic gesture saying we're solving a problem. And I think oftentimes that doesn't always get a clear examination. But I do think
this is where I'm going to say that does Christian ethics play a role in ending poverty and preventing climate change? Is this where our Christian ethics come into being? Or
Yeah.
how does that come into being?
Well, you know, in all of the world's religions, I think there are definite values. Starting, I think the most universal one is that human persons are created with a special, invaluable dignity, and so if one starts, you know, at that common point, that's common with really, I believe, all world religions. We can also see that certainly in Christianity, where we believe that we're created in God's image and likeness. That the next questions all have to follow from that. You know, what is it that we do then to make that dignity real? And as we look at, for example, within the Catholic tradition, we have our body of Catholic social teachings that touch on every issue you can possibly imagine to some degree, and we have over 100 years of history, starting, you know, in 1898 with Pope Leo XIII and Rerum Novarum, looking at you know, labor issues and child labor laws. Well, we've managed to a large extent you know, change the labor laws, so we no longer have little kids working in factories and things like that in this country.
In this country.
But when you begin to then look at things, you know, around the world, things are very different. So, again, we have, I believe,
sometimes we buy these products where the source is hiring young kids.
Exactly, and so there again, you know, we do have the rules, the principles, the reflection that tells us about what we should be doing. But again, you know, do we take the time to reflect on our current situation and begin to apply these ideas to the real life of real people?
And you think to apply these ideas will solve this problem, as I mentioned before?
Well, it'll give us a good start.
Where we have groups. You have the environmental group, you might have the engineering scientists, and you might have the politicians.
Mm-hmm.
They each might have their own view on how to solve the problem, and how do you get all three? And then we're going to bring in the religious group.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to bring them all together and say this is the best solution to solve the environment? This is the problem we're having now.
Yeah, well, and I do believe that one traditional role for the religious community is to do mediating work, to sit down and try to encourage and support dialogue. But again, if you've got parties that are refusing to move, then I'm not sure that that, you know, that there's any possibility for a real dialogue. And I think that at that point, then, you know, those are the places where sometimes people need to work in another dimension. Maybe it's the private sector versus government, and eventually government will move. But it's, you know, I can't say that I have the answer per se, but I certainly think that dialogue is a very important piece. And I think what happens oftentimes is that we don't invest ourselves in participating at the kinds of places where we could participate. You know,
I think that's the key.
Oftentimes, I think, you know, we tend to not exercise our ability to go to public hearings or to go to you know, even meetings at a local school or something like that. And those perhaps are places where before the issues get to be so big and so complex, you know, we might be able to make you know, some inroads.
And one of the things that I think we could do, and we're starting to, is in education.
Yes, for sure.
Is start in maybe Head Start.
Mm-hmm.
First, second grade, start teaching all about the environment. Start teaching how to wash your hands. Your hands is the first line of defense. Maybe start educating parents and kids proper nutrition.
Absolutely, those kinds of things.
Yeah, just a basic, basic, and where does that food come from? It comes from a farm, and what's the proper way of farming? You know, education might be the key.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's necessary is that, especially for us that live in the city, you know, is
Urban living?
that we don't often really go off, even though we have gorgeous parks here in the city of Chicago, the lakefront particularly. You know, we don't take the time to really spend time relaxing in the created world, you know, in the natural world, and allow that experience to really kind of penetrate our souls, so to speak. You know, we're so busy, we're running around, we're doing all kinds of things, and I often ask. When I speak to large audiences, I ask people to raise their hand, you know, within the course of a day, have you actually set your foot on a real pile of dirt or real green grass? Yeah. Or has it been that you have gotten up in the morning, you put your foot on a carpeted rug, you know, go through your house, you get in your car, you drive down a paved road, you know, get out on a piece of concrete, you get in an elevator, and so on, you know, and that your entire day, you may not even see or look up at the sky, you know, and then we somehow expect ourselves to have a love or a passion or some kind of real appreciation for the beauty of the natural world when it hasn't even entered our consciousness, and this can go on for sometimes months, maybe even years, depending on where you are, and that is a very different kind of experience than, you know, when we started out. You're talking about growing up and having a yard and people next door and, yes, and all those different kinds of interactions. And so what I say to people is, you know, a starting point for resolving the questions of poverty and climate change and environmental crisis is to simply take time to get yourself in touch with the beauty of the natural world, because unless we have a positive passion for this environment, for this world, and all of the different ways in which it serves us beyond just the, you know, the survival needs, the technology, the very busy kind of way of really using and using it up, we don't have any real relationship that way. It's simply, you know, feeding us, and we're consuming in a very literal sense.
I'm just wondering, in grammar school we should have a class starting with the kids on how to grow your own food.
Oh, absolutely. All of those things are
then
helpful.
Showing what is the providing the proper nutrition, and if you grow this way without using pesticides or herbicides or fertilizer, and maybe if you use grow organically, it's going to help the environment. Less CO2s in the atmosphere, and if you do an organic type of farming, vegetable, what you're growing, it absorbs the CO2, and you're helping climate change, and you're helping your health.
That's right. Yeah, and I think, you know, there's the axiom that you know, the first 5 years is what's important. You know, like how's it go? What's really important in life I learned in kindergarten or something like that. Well, I think there's a real truth to that, and I know in my own experience, as I described earlier, why that was a tremendous influence, and to begin to really see those connections. But again, you know, we have to take kids to petting zoos to understand that milk doesn't come from a carton, you know. so I think there would be, definitely is value, and I know that many schools are doing those kinds of education. And another thing that the religious community is doing is that there are many you know, religious orders within the Catholic Church, for example, who have had and still have large properties, and they have used some of this land now to do environmental education. In my own community, my community is based in Rochester, Minnesota, but we have a large acreage, and part of our land we've turned over into just allowing it to be natural Minnesota prairie, so people
and
can
no more pesticides, herbicides.
No, exactly right.
Because that's a problem that we've been having on a lot of the farms.
Yes. Oh yeah, and you have the and you have the bioaccumulation, and you have a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, things like that.
Runoff and
exactly.
And to encourage the farmers to switch their type of farming. This comes economics comes into being
that's right.
That they're saying that you could have more yield per acre using my seed and fertilizer and pesticides and herbicides versus organic farming.
Yes. And
so that's why they're afraid to make that move. Our farm bill that I think it's passed, I'm not sure, which is the largest farm bill that I don't know if they set aside funding for organic farming.
Yeah.
Because this is where economics, politics come into being.
Absolutely, and I think that from the educational standpoint too, by using land that really has really a sacred value in that sense, and that it is a place of nurturance, and it's a place of connecting to the earth in a kind of a caretaking way, because there's no farm grows and prospers unless it has some proper care. So I think that also brings out another dimension of the human spirit, where as we as Christians, as Catholics, many of the world's religions see the human person within the natural world as its caretaker.
And let me actually bring on that one.
Sure.
That's number 15 about the environment. I think you had a slide showing about West Virginia, where where the mountains, top of the mountains, removal of the mountains. It's right. Explain that. Explain.
Well, one of the things that we have as a question in our time is, how do we resolve our need for clean energy? And one of the proposals that's out there is that we can continue to use coal. Well, if you look at coal, it's one of the major resources that we have. We have a lot of it, and in West Virginia and other areas of the Appalachian region of the United States, where that's a very coal-rich area. And traditionally, there's been other kinds of mining where they've mined, interiorly under the mountains, and so in many places, the mountains themselves are actually kind of honeycombed, if you will. And but now more recently, it's been discovered that it's now profitable to get at some of the lesser grade coal. And one of the ways that they do that to save money is that they literally blow off the top of the mountains.
Sure, will you bring that up again? And
so what results is that if you think about a mountain and you literally shear off the top of it, well, all of the sludge and the other byproducts have to go somewhere, and it usually goes into the valleys. Well,
and that's what it's showing right now on the screen.
Yeah, and that the other thing, besides literally destroying the mountain, why you also then have attacked the watershed by putting all the sludge there. And even though there's been great effort to, they say, restore and the environment, they oftentimes use grasses that are not natural to the ecosystem, and you're disrupting the watershed. And so the watershed, you can't plug every hole in the mountain, it's just impossible oftentimes. And so what's happened is that there's been immense flooding. So at multiple levels you have irreparable damage being done, and actually NASA has photographs where there are hundreds of square miles of the Appalachian Mountains that look just like that very devastated picture. And so for the sake of getting that coal, we're destroying one of the major environmental, topographical features of our United States.
Of how the world was created.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but there are other places now, because this technology has been successful. It's being exported around the world, and similar kinds of things are happening elsewhere.
And then we also talk about the food crisis. And number 16, Sherry, we have on some food crisis items on there.
Yeah,
Could you read some of them?
Well, some of the causes, again, this situation is so complex because you're talking about a major, world system now. It's globalized. But if we look at what's happened in more recent times, is that back in the 1980s we had what was known as the liberalization of agriculture, where instead of having lots of small family farms, we started moving into more single crop corporate kind of farming styles to make money. And there was a good side to that in the sense that we produced a lot of, say, corn or soybeans or something like that. But with this change of land use, then you also had very different needs for the land itself. That you oftentimes we were talking about fertilizers. So if you plant the same kind of crop on the same land all the time, naturally you're going to deplete certain elements and so on. So
yes.
so you're going to then have a lot of need for artificial fertilizers, many of which have fossil fuel base. So you not only are using fossil fuel to do the vast farming of these huge fields, but you're also then adding more carbon by using fossil fuel based fertilizers. And so you've got kind of a double whammy there. You've got fossil fuel nitrate, and you've got all these elements going into the air from the processes of the.
And then when it rains, the runoff goes.
All the runoff goes right, exactly.
Maybe in the river streams and create algae, eliminate the dissolved oxygen, and you have a dead zone.
Yeah.
So we have all this coming up.
Yeah.
Now.
So and then all these different other factors. We have higher consumption of meat. Prosperity is good on the one hand, but one of the things we know is that when we're meat eaters, we also use the land very differently because it takes tons of grain to feed a cow.
And also they're injecting antibiotics, steroids, to bring them to the market faster. We eat it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it has a whole effect on food crisis.
So our food system really is not right now real ecologically friendly, because we've created a lot of artificial ways in which we use the land, and then systemically, when the commodities futures market used to be kind of localized in the sense of moving from farmer to farmer, but with deregulation of that commodities market, we now have people that don't know anything about farming, but they're speculating.
Sure.
And so it's just an investment for them. So there's been an unrealistic force brought to the commodities market, so that the whole process of the prices and food pricing and all of that has shifted, and this is the overall effect of all of this, is that food costs are higher.
And let's get back to your Franciscan sister.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have we're going to show a slide number 17, the theologians.
Okay, yeah.
And so how did the Franciscans, did they just started this there in the 2008 or 2006 on the environment, or did they start it way back? I mean, how did they start this, the Franciscans? I mean, was it just, or did you do it, Dawn? You said, I'm a sister,
I wish.
and now we're going to start the environment. Explain about the
Well, in 1979, Pope John Paul II, he proclaimed that Francis of Assisi was the patron of ecology. And if we look at Francis of Assisi's life, he grew up in Italy, and there was one thing that he was known for, was that he had an unusual sense of the natural world, and that it was attributed to the fact that he really had a true love for creation, not because he worshiped creation as such, but rather he saw through the created world the beauty and the love that God had for all of us, as
creatures, all
the creatures, and so intuitively If we look at his writings, what we know of his life, he really had a deep compassion for people. We know that he worked with lepers. We know that he encouraged informing the religious order of the Friars Minor in some of the rules that he set up for how the community should live. For example, the friars were never to cut a tree down so far that it could not regrow. New growth could not come up. He talked about how there was value in that they should plant a garden so that they would have food in later days when they had monasteries, but also to plant flowers, because one needs beauty, as we were talking about earlier, for the human spirit to really reflect on God's goodness and so on. Well, but then that was kind of what we talk today is a kind of a vernacular theology. It's something of the people. But later on, then Saint Bonaventure built on this. He was a scholar at the University of Paris in the 12th century or the 13th century, and he elaborated on some of these ideas of Francis. And one of the things that Bonaventure said is, he said, God is like a fountain. I always think of Buckingham Fountain out here in Chicago. God is like this fountain who just gives us all this goodness and just sprays us out into the world, and that all of creation then is kind of an overflowing of the love of God, and so every plant, animal, human person, even the inanimate objects bear some mark of this wonderful Creator. And if that's true, well then it's really sacrilegious. It's evil, sinful, in that sense, to do damage to the environment. And then Scotus, who followed another generation later,
but he was blessed, right?
Oh yeah, blessed. Yeah, well, yeah, he's in the category of the communion of saints as we have them in the official calendar. Yeah, he's called Blessed John Duns Scotus. And he again was a theologian and philosopher. But one of the things that he said, we can look at for example, a bouquet of roses, and we can admire its beauty, and we can see that together there's this beauty in the roses. But if we look carefully, no two roses are alike, and so. He, in his philosophical way of speaking, he said, there is a particularity, a thisness, in his Latin hacitas, of each element that has value beyond the value of any other thing of its kind. And so our notion of biodiversity, I think, is supported by this idea that if we lose any one element, why somehow the creation is diminished, and that and again, I think our modern science supports this. We have through the understanding of the laws of thermodynamics, that we, if a butterfly, flaps its wings in one part of the earth, it's going to change the air currents, and I think that's a similar kind of thing that Scotus was talking about. That everything is important, and if we're going to really, as Christians, if we're going to really appreciate and love and respect the creation, we need to do what we can within the best of our ability and intentions and knowledge to preserve and not destroy. So I think that's the whole point of Franciscan theology of the environment.
And then your new book now, right?
Yeah.
You have a new book. It's you published a book. It's called the Franciscan Theology of the Environment.
Yeah.
And what is and did you explain the Franciscan theology?
Yeah.
And in what way is a resource in your book?
Yeah.
Are you talking about it?
Well, this book was actually created as a textbook to be used in an undergraduate college classroom. So what we do there is give the students lots of exposure to theologians' writings, that are based on Francis and Bonaventure and Scotus, but also we try to make this practical. So there are exercises where, and some of the things we've talked about are actually in there, in the sense that how best to understand the environment is for example, if we reflect on your family, your growing up, what did you learn as a child? And how, as an adult, can you practice some of those things? Or I ask the students as an exercise, to do one of three things. Go out at noontime, and the sun is so bright, and we know that it's 186,000 miles per second is the speed of light, right? So if you look at the sun, and then you block it from view, and you realize that when that sun hits you again, that it takes that long, it takes 8 minutes at that speed for one ray of sunshine to get to you, that somehow you begin to grasp the vast dimensions of the universe, and you begin to appreciate really how we think we're so smart and we're so able to do all these things technologically, but this vast creation that's there, again, that it hopefully moves someone to the place of kind of awe and wonder, and again, I think we in trying to control the world, we miss that awe and wonder, and that's the starting point of theology. If we have this awe and wonder for God's creation, that somehow that reverence is also evoked in the human spirit. So not only do we talk about facts and scripture and the tradition that forms our Christian understanding of the created world, but we also try to make this really practical for students. Another thing, if you've ever gone out and just laid out on the grass or something and looked up at the sky, now that's hard to do in the city because of all our city lights, but again, to challenge them to find a place, whether it's a national park or state park or something, or go out and visit a friend on a farm or something, and really experience the beauty of the night sky, or to take some time to realize that if you lay there long enough, and if you do this at either sunrise or sunset, that you can actually give yourself the sensation that when the sun either sets or rises, it's not the sun that's moving, but it's the planet Earth that's moving, and that we're actually held by this marvelous gravity to the Earth, and that we don't go flying off into space, So again, for college students, sometimes that's kind of a fun thing, because they like to party late and they like to stay up, get up early in the morning sometimes, or stay up all night or something. So they do some of these things, and it's amazing the kinds of conversations that they enter into after doing some of those real practical kinds of exercise.
And this, of course, that you're teaching at the Chicago Theological Union.
Yeah, it's Catholic Theological Union, and
Catholic,
right, yeah. They used, that was the old name.
Now it's changed to Catholic.
Yeah, right. So, but at any rate, we do use some of this there.
So can the theologians and the ethics, do they have the expertise to solve it now?
Yeah.
Is it all the theologians or just the Franciscans theologians?
Well, I think theologians have insights that we can bring to the conversation, and I do think that one of the things that we do is, as theologians and as ethicists, is that we do try to reflect on the meaning of things. And when we see things like the ecological crisis or the food crisis, we have to ask, well, what's going on here that we are having a problem, and how is it that the human can change to be more faithful to what we understand God to be asking of us. And I think in our own time and in our own generation, with climate change and with the food crisis and with the poverty that we see resulting and intermixed with all of this. I think we do have a lot to contribute.
And so what does the Catholic Church contribute to this discussion? I mean, you are contributing as a sister of the Franciscan Order, but what has the Catholic Church contribute?
You know, this is one where I think the Vatican is actually on the cutting edge. You know, you've probably seen that they've put up a plan to put up solar panels all over the Vatican area to get their energy from the sun as much as possible. Both John Paul II and now Benedict XVI, they have both been very vocal about that we actually are being called to. John Paul II used the term ecological conversion, that we need to make a change, that we need to really take seriously some of the things that science is telling us, and that we don't do it for our own survival, but also for the glory of God, that we don't do damage to this beautiful created planet that we've been given as gift.
And this is one thing of the environment could bring everyone together, even though I dislike you or you hate me or this country hate this country wanted to destroy everything. If we don't solve the environment, we're all going to get destroyed.
That's right. So maybe we can't escape the earth.
Yeah, so maybe this is the only one thing that everyone could start being nice to each other.
Yeah, sure.
To just save the environment, and then if we're nice to each other, save the environment, then maybe we'll continue to be nice.
Some other things, exactly, yeah. And again, the U.S. bishops, back in 2001, where they put out a document talking, really a call for dialogue about climate change, and that we would be prudent. Maybe we can't, again, the whole question has been in the air. I don't think it's that strong now, but whether or not there's a certainty. Do we really know that humans are contributing to climate change, and it's not just a natural cycle and so on? But even if we can't prove that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what the bishops are saying to us in the United States and other places around the world too, that we should be prudent, that we use common sense,
common sense.
And that we don't take the risk of losing something that we have no control to recreate.
And that's where I feel the religious group has to play a big role.
Yeah.
And maybe the lead role.
Well, we're trying, I think, and there's a lot of efforts that are growing. And one of the things right here in Chicago, there is a group, it's Catholics United for the Environment, and this October 4th, at the Shrine of Our Lady of Pompeii, there's going to be this, what they call the pilgrimage for the environment, and it's going to really be a kind of a day-long event where there are going to be different speakers who are going to address these issues and to do it from a Catholic perspective. So I would just invite people to check that out.
Well, let's all go to the conference.
Great.
October the 4th, Pompeii Church.
Great.
And let's all try and save the planet.
Great.
Yeah.